Hi, and welcome to Say Grace, Food for Thought and Hospitality. I'm Steve Palmer, and I invite you to join me as we explore the stories behind leaders in the hospitality industry and beyond. Say Grace is your place to reflect, connect, and savor thoughtful narratives. Everyone has a seat at our table, so pull up a chair and let's discover the transformative power of hospitality together.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode two of Say Grace, Food for Thought in the Hospitality Industry. I'm Steve Palmer, and I'm here today with my bubby, my favorite person on the planet, Mickey Bakst, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, what an introduction.
I know. So here, I'm going to introduce you properly.
Okay.
Maître D, foodie, fundraiser, philanthropist, career restaurateur, mentor, and Charleston ambassador. These are just a few titles bestowed upon Mickey Bakst. Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, Mickey became interested in hospitality after helping a friend check IDs at a restaurant in Newport Beach, California. By the end of his first shift, he knew that the industry where he could focus his energy on hospitality and making people smile was where he belonged. Mickey's earlier career included time at Studio Cafe in Newport Beach, Tapawingo, and Tribute in Michigan, and most recently and notably at Charleston Grill in Charleston, South Carolina. As general manager of Charleston Grill at Charleston Place from 2004 to 2020, he played an essential role in helping the restaurant and Charleston become one of the most acclaimed destinations in the nation. Mickey's passion extends far beyond the dining room. In 2016, he and fellow restaurateur Steve Palmer, me, founded Ben's Friends, a support group for members of the food and beverage industry battling substance abuse and addiction. The mission of Ben's Friends is to offer hope, fellowship, a path forward to anyone that struggles with substance and abuse. This organization is named in honor of Ben Murray, a chef who took his own life in 2016. With decades of sobriety under his belt, Mickey believes that there are countless members of the restaurant industry that need help in combating the effects of alcohol and drugs. Since announcing his departure from Charleston Grill in early 2020, Mickey has dedicated himself to Ben's Friends, and in his role as executive director, very fancy, he is focused on spreading the word about Ben's Friends to existing and emerging chapters across the country. Under his leadership, he has grown the chapter presence to over 20 cities and impacted countless lives. Ben's Friends is not Mickey's first forte into charitable efforts. In 2009, he founded Feed the Need in response to the stress put on area homeless services as a result of the economic downturn. To date, Feed the Need has served over 750,000 meals and donated nearly $5 million to those in need. For the last 10 years, Feed the Need has underwritten the annual Christmas lunch for 1,800 people at Neighbors Together in Charleston, which we're doing this Saturday, and with the support and generosity of partners, including the Indigo Road.
Yes.
Shameless plug. The Charleston area food and beverage community Dining for a Cause raised a record-breaking $930,000 in 22. Last but not least, in 2014, Mickey created Teach the Need, an organization committed to training at-risk teenagers in the skills needed to work in the front of the house in Charleston restaurants. Today, hundreds of students have gone through the course, and many of them are currently working in the industry. Mickey credits his charitable success to the longtime support from the team at Charleston Place and also to the city's close food and beverage community. His philosophy, when you can, you should, has led him to serving, supporting, and impacting the lives of people everywhere he goes. Mickey lives in Charleston and enjoys traveling with his wife, helping others when he can, and spending time at home. Welcome, Mickey.
Sounded really nice. Now tell me, what would you say without all of that?
I would say that...
Because he read that, everybody.
I would say that you are the most charitable person in Charleston, South Carolina.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I mean, there are many wonderful souls in this city, but I have not met anyone that, I mean, every time there's a need, you're there. You you meet the moment, whether it was the mattress fire that claimed the lives of the firefighters, the Charleston 9 murders, you're always there.
Thank you. Yeah.
How?
It's important.
How did you, have you always been that way?
Always.
Like before Charleston Grill and all
long
that?
before, always. You know, I came from a family where my mother was sitting on the phone every day calling people in senior homes who didn't have family, just to let her know there was somebody there. When I was 7 years old, they would take me down to the poorest areas of Detroit, and I would work rummage sales where people would literally, I'll never forget, the door would open, people would stampede, and I'm this little kid, and they're grabbing clothes just so they can have a jacket for the winter time. And as I got older, I saw kitchens where people stood in line for hours. And my parents were really good at telling me that if I had the ability to do this, that I should. And even throughout my addiction, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, even throughout, there was something about helping others that kept me from totally losing it. I mean, you know, not to sound like better than, but it's just true. I used to go to grocery stores in the pits of my depression and see people struggling and pay their grocery bill just because you could tell they were struggling to make ends meet. I got involved with restaurants, and restaurants gave me a vehicle in which to do more, because the power of the restaurant and the power of the restaurant community added with my desire to help, together created a force that was far greater than me. And I used it all throughout my career. And so, I mean, going back to 9/11, what I did around the country, going back to natural disasters in certain areas. My favorite was, if this is not going off topic, my favorite was 10 days before Christmas in Detroit. I don't know if I ever told you this story.
I have not heard this story.
A warehouse that had all the goods needed to distribute to shelters throughout southeastern Michigan burned to the ground. And it was 10 days before Christmas. And it was a St. Vincent de Paul warehouse, and it was loaded, 500,000 square feet of stuff, and burned to the ground. And I came home one night, and there's the news story, and I called up the director. You'll love this. I called up the number, and I said, what can I do to help? And they said, we need people to man telephone lines, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no. Who's in charge? And I got on the director. He said, we need 500,000 square foot of space. We need this, and this. I said, you don't know me from Adam, but you'll hear from me. And the next morning, I must have smoked 3 packs of cigarettes. I drank pot after pot of coffee. And at the end of the day, this is no bullshit, Steve. At the end of the day, I had reached out to the chairman of General Motors, the chairman of Kmart's, the president of Ford Motor Company, all of the majors in Detroit. And we had a new warehouse. We had telephone lines. We had Kmart providing trucks and equipment. And at the end of it, I get a call, and it's CNN International. And then I get a letter from the Pope.
Of course you did.
This is no
Only
joke.
Mickey Bakst.
So I've been, and then we raised over $20 million over the course of this run. And we supplied people with things. I don't say that. I say that because I was given a gift. It's not something that I studied for. I was given a gift, and I've been able to do this my whole life with absolute joy. And, I love doing it. What can I say?
Yeah.
I love doing it.
It is a gift.
I don't know if I got off track.
It was
I hadn't thought about that in a long time.
I don't know that
I'll
we've
tell
ever.
you the whole story.
Yeah,
It was amazing.
I definitely have never heard.
Oprah? I turned down a spot on Oprah because I thought it was the director's place to be there. Seriously.
A generous heart. What was it checking IDs in Newport Beach? What drew you to this whole circus?
You know, this is an open discussion, right?
Totally.
So I was selling drugs.
That's a good place to start
I
with
was
your
selling
checking
drugs,
IDs.
living in Newport Beach, California. And I was 3 blocks, I had a place on the ocean, 3 blocks from the Balboa Pier. And I hung out at this restaurant that was right on the boardwalk, looking out directly on the ocean, right at the foot of the pier. And I became very good buddies with the owner. We partied together, would be a good way of saying it. And one day his doorman didn't show up. And he said to me, I need help. Would you check IDs? I said, what the hell? I had more fun that night. I can still remember the feeling of watching people, making them laugh, making them smile, hearing them as they walked out saying that was great, but standing in line waiting was the best part of my night. It was a turn on. It just ignited everything inside me. And for the first time, I thought, I had never ever thought about restaurants before that. I had no aspiration to be a waiter, no aspiration to be a Maître D or an owner. It wasn't even in my wheelhouse.
Right.
But doing it that night connected me with the magic of creating experiences for people in a different way. And so that's what happened. Then the relationship grew. I didn't do that again, but then he said, blah, 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 I need more help. And that was the beginning of my history in restaurants.
When was a moment, and I don't mean this currently because we're going to get to a lot of what you and I are into now. When was the moment because I know you're going to say there were a lot of them, in fine dining where you just thought, I have arrived, this is exactly what I wanted to do, and I'm living this now?
I can tell you what it was like to walk into Gray Kuntz's Las Penas. But actually, before that, it was walking into Jeremiah's Stars.
In San Francisco, yeah, of course.
Because Jeremiah had this way of making not just brilliant food, he created theater. It was a show being in his dining room. And I truly believed that that's what restaurants were supposed to be. That was magic. Las Penas took me to a different level. I realized what sheer elegance and attention to detail could do. And then if you married those two things together, you created something that everybody loved. You know, it wasn't just for those that could afford it. It was for everybody who wanted the experience. So I guess I would say being in Stars, and this is way back. I mean, this is probably in the
early 80s.
Early 80s, yeah.
Did you see that documentary film about Jeremiah Tower?
Yeah.
Brilliant if you haven't watched it.
Yeah, brilliant. And he was brilliant. The brilliance of him, I mean, people talk about him as a chef, but he was an absolute entertainer.
Right.
Which appealed to me.
Tapawingo. Our tribute.
Oh, don't even ask me that.
Which one of your children did you love the most?
It's like, you know, well, for the audience who doesn't know, you know, Tapawingo was a restaurant that was in a town of 400. It was a dairy farmer's town. You drove into town and you smelled the cow dung. I mean, literally. It was on 8 acres of property on a private lake where 2 swans went every night by the window. It was with flower gardens that rivaled anything you've seen, that literally were photographed for national magazines. It was a seasonal restaurant that was high elegance and warm comfort, with simple American food done farm to table before anybody used the expression farm to table, which we all tried to do back then. Tapawingo holds a special place in my heart because of the magic of the environment. It was stunning. Every night the sun would set, the swans would go by, and everybody in the room would go, ah. It was magic. Tribute, on the other hand, Tribute, which many would say during that era was truly one of the great.
Yeah.
I don't want to
for
brag.
sure.
It was considered, the New York Times, the greatest restaurant anywhere between New York and L.A. Tribute was in Detroit.
I remember reading a review in Wine Spectator.
Yeah, John. John Mariano.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was, whereas Tapawingo was more from the earth, for lack of better words.
Right.
Tribute was we had a budget that was unlimited. I had the backing of a billionaire who allowed me to do whatever the hell I wanted to do. And there was nothing that we couldn't afford to do. And Tribute was a tribute to the highest end of fine dining. Right. And it was every single, I went to New York and I found a napkin ring with these cut jewels in them. And I had this artist make something because it gave me an idea. And I had this artist create these napkin rings that when you took them off of the table, you put them on a pole and there was light that were on the wall and the lights shined on them, shimmering through the dye. It was amazing stuff.
Right.
At that time, it was. So which was my favorite? I guess if I had to, because you were stepping on my toe and going to break it, I probably would say Tapawingo because of the sheer earthiness. It was down to earth.
And that's where you invited Danielle Ballou to come cook, Charlie Trotter. Is that where you met?
I was a gutsy little shit. I had nothing. How that started is my partner, because I became partners. I didn't start that restaurant. I became partners in that restaurant. My partner was a brilliant chef named Pete Peterson. He was actually on the original design team for the Ford Mustang. He was a designer, and he loved cooking, and he bought this 8-acre piece of property, not knowing what the hell to do, and he created this restaurant. What was your question? My brain just got lost.
You're all good. The guest chefs that you...
So Pete, one day I said to Pete, if you had a chance to cook with any chef in this country, who would you want to cook with? Name 10 people. And he came to me the next day with a list of 10 people. And I said, okay, you're going to cook with all of them. And I got on the phone, and my first one was Charlie Trotter, Emeril Lagasse, and Brad Ogden.
Wow.
And I knew none of them. Knew none of them.
Right.
But I got on the phone and I talked to them and I told them about this magical place. And I said, I promise you, if you come, you'll have an incredible experience. And we created experiences not just for the guests, but for the chefs. I would take them out. We would build literally a kitchen in the woods in May, and we would have them go morel hunting. and everybody would meet in the middle. Mario Batali doing morels in the middle of the woods. and we would do things. I had a customer who owned a company called Four Winds Boat, and he had these antique yachts. And we would take them on Lake Michigan, and we'd have caviar and the best wines, and we'd have parties. And the reputation of the experience for the chefs grew to the point where when I would call somebody, they'd find I started hearing, "I've been waiting for you to call. When do you want me to come?"
Right.
And that just carried on because I always believed that it was not just creating experiences for the customer, that our chefs and the people who worked the dinners, the winemakers who came. And just like in Charleston, as we started getting great chefs, we created experiences that they went out and they told their friends.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I got to go to Tapawingo. I got to go to Tapawingo. It was, when I tell you that in those days, it was 5 hours north of Detroit. The airport was like a puddle jumper little airport, the town that it was in the middle of nowhere. And they came from all over the country.
Wow. What do you love the most about hospitality?
Making people smile. Making people feel good. You know, you always use the Maya Angelou line. It's how you make people feel.
Always.
And that's I think, and again, not to sound arrogant, I think that that's what I built my career on. And I built my reputation on making people feel good. There's magic in that. When you see it in their eyes, when you know that they've just, God, I love this.
Right.
There's nothing like that.
There isn't. There
Nothing
isn't at
like
all.
that.
Who would you tribute? I know that clearly selling drugs and checking IDs was a. Did you have a mentor coming up? Who would you say, like, this person invested in me and it made a difference?
I hate to say this, but honestly, no.
I didn't think so, but
Honestly, no.
Yeah.
What, you have a very spiritual bent. I just take life a day at a time, right?
I know.
Right? But I have often said I was born with a gift, and that gift is what I used. When I went at Studio Cafe, nobody told me what to do. I just felt it, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
I knew what it took, that my job was to make people feel good. And I just felt it. And I hate to say it, there wasn't, Serial Mancini didn't show me what to do and how to be a better maitre d' or how to sell more wine. It just, for me, it was just a natural thing, which is a reason that I've belittled myself at times, because I don't feel I had to work for what I did. It all came natural. Whereas I look at other people and I see the effort and the work that went into building what they build, and I think, I didn't have to do that.
What a gift.
It is a gift.
What a gift. After living in Detroit, Newport, Charleston, what's your favorite place?
What's my favorite place to live in?
Yeah.
If
money were no object.
Well, it's not about money, no object. I'll tell you the favorite place I lived was in northern Michigan, except for the frickin' weather in the winter.
Right.
There's just something magical about northern Michigan. The spring is gorgeous, the fall is gorgeous, the summers are not unbearable. The water is completely blue.
I gotta go.
And
I gotta go. I've never
go.
been. Yeah.
You've got to go. It's phenomenal.
I'll take Shelby. So you and I met in 2009. That's when I moved back to Charleston.
Yes.
Is that right?
Who the hell is this guy, Steve Palmer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I got sober in '04, and and you weren't here, and I needed you. I was running.
I got here in '04.
I know.
Yeah.
I
wasn't here before.
I'm sorry. I got sober in '01. I left town in '04.
Right.
And I remember meeting you, and we started going to breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so grateful for that. And I remember we were like, we need to do something to help the industry. We were sitting at Page's on Coleman, and I remember it. We would meet Saturday mornings for breakfast, and we both were like, we've got to get the message across to people in the industry that not only can they be sober, but that it's pretty good. That it's not. We're not white knuckling it through. We're actually thriving. You remember that breakfast?
Oh, I remember it really well. I want to go back. I always credit Ellen for this because Ellen was the one who said to me, you need to reach out to somebody here in Charleston. Because I had been sober, I don't know, 20 years, what am I, 42? I'd been sober 18 years when I came here. But I didn't build a community. I didn't like AA here at all. And I didn't build a community. And my wife said it was essential. And I knew that you were sober, and we had already met. But we had already met, and I remember calling you, and we sat there, and what you're forgetting, I think, is that as we met, we talked about more and more people. It seemed that we always heard another story about somebody who had screwed their lives up or passed away or got laid off because they drank. And so, I remember very clearly. I also want to say to the general public, he doesn't have time to meet every Saturday morning, but the invitation's there.
I do not. I do not.
He knows that too.
Yeah. And
no, it was amazing.
It was, I think we all crave community, like we're sober or not. I think we all crave a sense of connection. And that was important to me at that time.
Me as well.
And we kind of brainstormed about maybe we should start a 12-step meeting. Then we both came back to breakfast, and we both were like, we're too busy.
Too busy.
And I remember not long after that, in 2016, I'm always, I don't even know if I've talked to you about this, but so struck at like one of the most meaningful things I think in both of our lives that's ever happened came out of somebody committing suicide. Like
no question.
One of the most terrible things, I mean, culturally as a society, suicide is way up there as one of the darkest things. And yet this like really beautiful thing has happened with Ben's friends. That first meeting in November of 2016, I can't
2016.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when in November. I remember it was November. Did you have any sense that it would be? No, and I
what
also it is,
I remember we would say we never, and first of all to the audience, so that the audience knows, because I don't know if you've spoken about this. Steve and I would talk about people, as you said, who had hurt themselves or died or lost their job. And we always said we were too busy, just as you just said.
Yeah.
And then there was an incident that happened with me at that tribute dinner I talk about all the time. And we still said we're too busy. Yeah. And then I'll never forget when Ben's Friends was formed, when you had a friend come to Florence, South Carolina to help you open a restaurant. You hadn't seen him in a long time.
10 years.
You hadn't seen him in years. He was working with you in the kitchen to get a restaurant started. And he was working with other sober chefs, our friend Scott Crawford.
Elliot
And I'll
Kusher,
never
Eric-
forget. I'll
Eric
never
Zitza.
forget how broken Ben Murray was his name, and Ben didn't show up for work.
Yeah.
And what did you do? You went.
I went to the hotel room and, well, I didn't go to the room. I went to the hotel and we were texting. He wouldn't answer the phone and he just kept saying, like, I know I've blown it with you. And I was like, what are you talking? I didn't understand what was going on. And I didn't go to the front desk and say, you need to call 911 or you could, because honestly, I thought he was drunk and going to sleep it off. And he didn't sleep it off. He committed suicide. And I remember you were the first person I called. Well, I went to the hospital because he was alive initially when he shot himself. He was alive. And so I went to the hospital, and of course, because I wasn't family, they wouldn't release anything. But then a nurse came out. I was crying. And she came out and was crying. And all she would say is, Ben's not here anymore. She said, I can't, that's all I can really tell you, but Ben is not here. And I understood what she was saying, that Ben was gone. And I remember I called you.
Crying.
Yeah. And I was like, man, we have got to do something.
Yeah.
And then I remember calling his 80-year-old mother. And she said, Ben's been in detox 6 times.
Right.
And he would get out and say, Mom, I'm fine now. I don't need to go to those meetings. And that was kind of how it all started. And I remember you repeated it over and over again. Let's just do something and do it now. Like we don't need to wait. We don't need to have big planning sessions. Let's just do it right now.
And we got on the phone and called up the 2 local food writers.
Yep.
And we said Steve Palmer and Mickey Bakst were going to be at this location, this time, every week. And that was the beginning. We didn't even know it was called Ben's Friends
Right.
at that moment. All we wanted to do was help people here.
Yeah.
And never. I have to ask you a question because I'm not sure you've ever told me exactly. You didn't find him in the room.
No.
Was it a wellness check?
I think somebody heard the gunshot.
Somebody heard the gunshot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were broken that day.
I couldn't
you
believe
were broken that day.
I could not believe
Yeah.
it. Couldn't
And it
believe
was time. And
Yeah.
so when we started this, and for the audience sake, Ben's Friends is an organization that is committed to helping people in the food and beverage industry who are struggling with addiction. That's all it is.
That's it.
We're not therapists, we're not surgeons.
We're
just
experts at nothing.
Yeah, we're just 2 sober people who know how to stay sober in the industry, and we hoped we could help
Yeah.
some people here.
Yeah.
And now it has just developed legs and grown, and
25 cities?
yeah, it's pretty.
That's because of you.
You know what? I think it's because the whole concept we created is good and people like it. You know, the reality is, as you know, there are many people. AA is where I got sober.
Me too.
Okay, and I am grateful to AA for my life,
Amen.
plain and simple.
Amen.
But there are plenty people who are in this industry who go to AA and for one reason or another can't connect.
Yeah.
Whether it's they're 24 years old and they've got a bunch of tattoos on their face and an earring and they don't relate to the people who look like me in the meeting.
Right.
Or whether they don't like the rules, quote unquote, they don't want to work the steps, whether they don't have a God concept and they get turned off. One reason or another, they don't. And our philosophy was to provide a space where people didn't have those, but they found community.
Community.
Which is what we both believe is essential to sobriety.
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID was in some ways,
Boom.
I mean, as it relates to Ben's Friends, I don't want to belittle anybody's experience, but like it immediately when you talk about that word community, we were like, all right, we're going to hop on Zoom. You were really like, okay, every day at 1 o'clock, and you laid the ground for the format. And we hopped on, and all these people from all over the country, because it couldn't go anywhere, we're hopping onto Zoom going, hi, I'm here. I'm in my house alone. But it really was rocket fuel for Ben's friends in a lot of ways.
COVID unquestionably. And I want to correct you. We now have people who stop in from the Netherlands, from Spain, from Germany, from Canada, from the UK.
All over the world.
From literally coming. We had a call from Australia once. I mean,
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty amazing. And, you know, for us, and I'm going to speak for you, I don't think we care if they stay in Ben's Friends. When we originally started it, as Gabe Rucker in Portland said, Ben's Friends was a gateway drug
To sobriety.
And we encourage people to try whatever they want.
Right.
You know, but we insist, or we preach community.
Yeah. And how do you think, I mean, are you aware of the profound effect you've had on other people's lives? And I don't mean that from an arrogant, but like, do you are somebody that has affected an enormous amount of people on this planet. Do you have an awareness of that?
I don't know. I don't think so. I got to call Nikki, who we both know, and I'll start crying, because she actually made me cry on my 42nd. She said, I want you to stop for a minute, and I want you to think about all the people all over that you helped. And then I want you to think about the people that they helped because you helped them.
The ripple effect.
The ripple effect. And I don't think about it. No, I don't really dwell on it. I don't think about it. But I do know that I've been instrumental in helping a number of people, and I'm grateful for that.
You have.
Yeah.
You have.
I know that.
You have.
Yeah.
And we love you for it, Mickey.
Thank you, buddy.
The intersection of philanthropy and hospitality. Do you think they're interrelated?
Oh, I think that they have to be interrelated.
Right.
I mean, listen, let's just take a restaurant. A restaurant is about creating experiences for people. Bottom line,
Yeah.
I couldn't give a shit if the food is from, here or there, or what goose's
pickled vegetables.
what
or,
goose's ball for massage. I remember Charlie Trotter just like, and the thing was they massaged it and they did this. Restaurants are about making people feel good.
That's right.
Right?
Amen.
And here's the reality, and here's where the intersection is in my mind. Helping others makes people feel good.
Yes.
It makes you feel good. So forget the business aspect, which, by the way, I happen to believe doing charity work for a restaurant is one of the greatest marketing ploys there is.
I think it's a responsibility, too.
It's a responsibility, no question, but it's also a marketing tool.
Sure.
And
sure.
the reality of the matter is many events you chose throughout your career for the restaurants because of the client base that the charity appeals to. Many times.
Right.
But having said that, it is a responsibility, right? But it's based ultimately in the same thing, making people feel good. That's what you do in your restaurants.
Yeah.
You create a restaurant and you think, okay, I'm going to put the music this way and the lighting this way. You're doing it to create an atmosphere that makes people feel good. Charity makes people feel good.
Right.
And I think there's that intersection. That's why doing charity to me is just an extension of hospitality. You're doing for others.
I love that.
You
I love that. Thinking about hospitality today in 2024, you've been at the game a long time. thankfully for Ben's friends, you retired in 2020 during COVID and are the full-time Ben's friends. And as your co-founder, thank you, because my day job, Ben's friends would be nowhere if it were relying on me to drive that train. So thank you. How do you think hospitality's changed, and why do you think it's changed?
Oh, you know something, Steve? I'll start by saying it's changed. Economics has changed it.
Yeah.
You know, I was in a restaurant the other night that will remain nameless until we're off the air. And I was appalled at the service. It was awful. And dinner was not cheap. It was awful. Economics are people can't afford to train anymore. They're struggling to find people. In my day, early on, like I'm really old, we trained people for weeks and weeks. You wanted to work in my restaurant? You didn't get on the floor in front of a server for weeks. Literally, you were tested on all the food. You were tested on service skills. You were made to open bottles of wine and pour them so it was done right. We spent time and effort. Restaurants can't afford to in a lot of cases now. The small independents can't afford to train people that way. That's one of the things that I think is really, you know, people say it's the employees, you know, the labor pool, but the reality is a lot of the owners are not training people the way they should be trained, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's a new generation that just doesn't want to work the same way. You showed up, I showed up for work. When I got sober, I lost my first restaurant, and I worked in a bunch of restaurants around the country. I was the first person there every single day.
Yep.
I never said I don't want that table. I would be the last person out.
Yep.
I'd come in early to look in the wine room because I wasn't drinking anymore, but I had to learn what the wine is. I don't see that anymore.
No.
I don't see the commitment. And the other side is, and I apologize to the public for saying this, there's a lot of customers that have become really difficult. I think more so than ever in my career. And
why do you think that is?
I don't know. I can't answer that. Maybe they're just tired of getting bad service.
Right. Well,
you know,
it's like
maybe it's a circle.
A vicious loop.
I don't know. You know, I have found myself, fortunately, my wife, she'll grab my knee when she knows I'm about to, like, you know me, I never yell.
Yeah.
I don't but there's times when my service is so bad, I just want to go. Like the other night, I'm literally saying, excuse me, the fork goes on this side, the knife goes, and I'm paying $57 for an entree.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
So I can't answer.
What
You're in the game.
What fixes that? Because the you know, to me, what is so the juxtaposition is people are going out to dinner more than they ever have. You know, our industry has flourished in a way. Foodies, Top Chef, the Food Network. You would assume service would get better, and it's the reverse. It's definitely
It's
the reverse.
You know,
what changes
I think that everybody thinks they can open. You know, again, 1985, right? And I'm making myself seem really old. 1985, restaurants had tablecloths. Restaurants had truly beautiful menus.
Yeah.
There were flowers on the table. There were candles on the table. Economics have changed that. We used to build beautiful restaurants.
Yeah.
Even in smaller cities. It wasn't just New York and San Francisco and Chicago and Los Angeles. In smaller cities. Now, economics make it that the real estate is so damn high. Getting into a restaurant is so costly these days for a lot of people. Product is so high. labor pools are so short, that there's a combination that makes it very difficult for the owner to make a living. And I think that's affected the industry. But I would defer to you on all of these questions. You're the one who's in it. I'm not. I'm just a simple country boy.
Whatever. What is your greatest hope and aspiration for hospitality?
I can't answer that question, but I'll tell you what my greatest hope and aspiration for the industry is that as a whole, the industry recognizes the need to care for the employees. And as a whole, I don't know, that's not saying for hospitality, but I think daily that there are so many kids around this country. If you look at the statistics, 15.5 restaurant employees in the country, 15.5 million, 2.5 estimated with problems with alcohol or drugs.
Yeah.
The industry needs to wake up more than it has. And my hope is that as an industry, the restaurant industry sees the value of their employees as human beings and realizes that they need, as you say always, they need to take care of their employees every bit as much as they need to care for their guests.
Amen.
And that's just not happening enough. There's slow trickle movements. There's owners, and this is not a paid plug, but there's owners like you that are doing things for the guests, for the employee.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but you or David Howard just signed a thing, I think you have it, where every employee can get mental health care.
Yeah, we have that.
Right?
Yeah,
You have
absolutely.
It. You have it. You know, taking care of the employees first is really
It's the only way.
It's the only way. But it's not the way it is for the overwhelming majority of the industry.
I know, and it makes me so sad.
But it's also not the way we lived when we were younger. We didn't, listen, guy came in to me and was drunk, or a gal came in drunk. What did you say 15 years ago?
Get out.
Get the hell out of here and don't come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were part of that.
Yeah.
You know, I sometimes regret, you know, I've got a great reputation in the industry for how I treated people, but I have to tell you, I told the employee to get out and don't come back many times.
Sure.
Shame on me.
Sure. What's your greatest hope for Ben's friends?
Well, I have a friend who's my co-founder who used to say, I would say, slow down, Steve.
I remember at 9 restaurants, you were like, you're going to go bankrupt.
I wasn't going to go bankrupt. I was going to go, you were going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
I don't think I said bankrupt. I said,
You told me about a friend
You got to
that-
slow
yeah.
down. Oh, that's right, I did.
You did.
I did. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
My hope for Ben's friends is that the industry as a whole embraces us and promotes us to their employees, and that employees everywhere knows that there's an organization that doesn't cost them anything, that doesn't charge anyone, and is only there to help them fight the bondage of their addiction. And I hope that everybody knows it. And we're lucky. We've got Open Table backing us.
Yes, we do.
We've got
Thank you,
other
Open Table.
companies backing us. I think the message needs to get out everywhere so that people know we're there. That's my hope, is that everybody in the industry knows we're there.
A couple more questions, and I know you're super busy getting ready for tomorrow. What's been the biggest surprise for you with Ben's Friends in terms of what it's given you? And don't say it's made me feel good to give back, but like...
No, I won't say that.
Yeah.
I
like,
won't say that.
what is-
I mean, the reality is, when we created Ben's Friends, I was 34 years sober.
It's 8 years old. Isn't that wild?
Fucking wild.
It's just so fucking wild. 8 years
I
ago.
was 34 years sober, and I think if you think about it, you would tell people that you saw me and I was always up, always feeling good at that time. I felt when I was 34 years sober that I couldn't feel any better. The connections that I have made in Ben's friends has enriched my sobriety in a way that I never anticipated. I truly, I feel so connected to so many people that it's just made me feel richer.
Right.
And so I guess that would be my answer.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
Did
Tell
that
me-
answer the question?
It did. It did.
Yeah.
It did. 2 more questions, and I'll let you. 3 more, and I'll let you out of here. Tell me about the greatest hospitality experience you've ever received.
You know, you're gonna,
I mean, you've eaten all over
I've
the
eaten-
world. All over the world.
you're gonna be surprised when I tell you what it is, but I have repeated this 100 times. Casey Lavin, who we both know.
Yeah.
It was my 60th birthday, and my wife called him up and said, it's Mickey's 60th birthday. He was the managing director of the Cloister at Sea Island.
Yeah.
And my wife and Casey said to my wife, you just show up. I'm taking care of everything. I have been blessed to have been treated like a king by the greatest.
Right.
I've had Ducasse cook me a meal and serve it himself, every dish. I mean, we arrived at Casey's place. He greeted us. He took us to the house on the ocean that he arranged for us. He said, be in the lobby at 7 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, we showed up in the lobby, and there was somebody who said, Mr. Bakst, Mrs. Bakst, follow me. They took us into the kitchen, which is this gorgeous, top-of-the-line, state-of-the-art kitchen with a little viewing room, and they sat us in the viewing room, and the person said, the only choice you need to make tonight is what channel you'd like to watch, and they handed us a silver platter with the remote control. And the remote control controlled 5 TVs in the room, and we watched as they prepared 3 courses for us that were beautiful. At the end of the 3rd course, somebody else came in and said, Mr. and Mrs. Bakst, please follow me. They took us into the wine cellar, where there's a table that seats, a wood table that seats 10 on each side. And Casey had 150 candles lit, flowers over the whole room. A violin is playing. A violin is playing. It gets better. A violin is playing, and they sat us in the middle of the table, and they served us 3 more courses. 3 different chefs, each made a course. Small plates. The 3rd course was served. Another person came and said, Mr. and Mrs. Bakst, your journey's to continue. Please follow us. We followed them into...
Somebody should have filmed this.
Oh, it was...
I mean,
I will tell
this
this
is
story till the
crazy.
day I die. But they took us into the lounge, and they said, please, in the back of the lounge, please have a seat here. We'll come and get you in a moment. There were 2 pianos, a dueling piano routine up on the stage. There were all these people. They finished their song, and the pianist said, ladies and gentlemen, there's a very special guest in our room tonight celebrating his birthday. We'd like to invite Mickey Bakst up on the stage. I'm going, what the hell? I get up on the stage, and the one guy's playing piano, the other guy's standing there to greet me. And he said, you know, we know that you've had sort of a special night, but we don't want it to end now. And a door opened, and 9 chefs in chef's hats came out carrying a giant cake that served everybody in that bar with sparklers on it. And everybody in the place sang happy birthday. And then they said, and now it's time to go. They took us back to the room in a golf cart. We got back to the room. There was a trail of rose petals leading into the bedroom. It was all covered with flowers. There was a stack of DVDs of the kind of movies I like. There was a bucket of champagne for Ellen, a bucket of Fiji for me. There was 5 different full jars of my favorite candies. And there was a note that said, happy birthday, we love you. That was unbelievable.
I'm speechless. I don't need, no one is ever going to top that.
No
I'm
one's
gonna
going to
ask
top that.
I'm going to ask our guests that question. No one is ever going to top that.
Do you have him coming?
Who?
Casey.
I should.
You should.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It was the best.
That's just
I mean, that's
mind-blowing.
12 years ago. I still giggle about it. It was unbelievable.
Wow. What keeps you up at night?
Not much. Honest to God, I lay down,
No
I fall
fears,
asleep.
no.
You know, I'm 70. Well, you know the stuff I won't talk about.
Yeah.
You know, there's shit that bothers me. There's no question about it. But nothing keeps me up at night. I feel like I've done good. I feel like I owe nothing to anybody. There really isn't, maybe what's going to happen the next 4 years I worry about.
Sure.
But I think everybody does, either regardless of where you are. But I put my head on the pillow every night, and I fall right asleep, and I wake up. And that's my night, literally. I don't toss, I don't turn, I don't get up 8 times to go to the bathroom. I go to sleep, and I wake up. I don't think anything really keeps me up at night, other than some personal stuff that I won't share.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Last question. What's one thing no one knows about you?
That basically underneath this beautiful, kind, wonderful exterior, I'm a degenerate at heart. It's true.
I know that about you, but not everybody.
Actually, not everybody knows
Not
that.
everybody knows that. I know that about
I think that if people knew the thoughts in my head at times, they would run for the hills.
Right.
But, I mean, honestly, I'm an open book. You know that.
I do.
I'm a complete open book.
Mickey, thank you.
I hope this thing is a great success for you.
I love you.
Yeah,
You're
I
one
love
of the
you
most
too.
important people in my life.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you. We'll
I
talk.
just want to know, why number 2, not number 1?
I knew that was coming. I knew it.
I said to Lana, you're number 1.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, y'all. Hey, big shout out today to Grace and the whole team at the Stolen Food Lab for allowing us to host our first podcast here. What a beautiful space. It was 3 minutes from our office in downtown Charleston, and I didn't even know it. And you can host your event here. It's super cool. There's a kitchen, there's parking, there's all the things you need. Go to Stolen, STOLON, foodlabs.com. Thank you, Grace.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Say Grace, Food for Thought and Hospitality. We hope you join us next time as we continue to dive deeper into the inspirational stories about the transformative power of hospitality.